Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Castlevania Dracula X. In the last part we started off the game and now we're heading into Stage 4. Now, as I mentioned at the end of the last part, this isn't necessarily where you're going to end up in the game if you fall in that one room late in Stage 3 that's a bunch of basically like, I think those were like ionic pillars in particular from recalling my art history classes. But since we managed to get through there and got the key right before the Dullahan boss fight, we're now in this stage, and we're going to want to keep this key for about 90% of the stage. It's limiting, admittedly, because that means you can't get any of the subweapons you might really like the axe, or the cross boomerang, or especially the holy water, depending on the game. But I feel the whip is good enough in this game that you don't exactly need it, so to speak. Because in this game, if I'm recalling correctly at least, I think your whip is always at its most powerful. It's not like Castlevania 1 through 3 and 4, where you have to get those little weird candle things to power it up and stuff. If I'm recalling, you're always at max whip power. If anything, that's probably another one of the reasons Dracula X is one of the easier mainline classic Castlevanias. And I think Rondo of Blood had this effect as well, but it wasn't as noticeable because that game was generally harder than Dracula X, as I feel, barring some dumb stage design choices. You don't have as much restocking to do after death. You get a new subweapon, you get your hearts, and you're back into it. You don't need to worry about a triple shot or a double shot. You don't need to worry about losing all of the other stuff. You just got the item crashes, and that's all you need. And I can appreciate that. With that said, be careful. If I recall, spikes in this game, as you can see them here, are still instant kill, I think. I don't think I've ever actually died to the spikes themselves in this room, and I can't tell if those were potentially also crushing deaths. Also, not the biggest fan of this music track. It's just kind of short and repetitive. Okay, well that one's not instant kill at least. That's good. Alright, this is the screen where things can go a little haywire, because not only is this where you need the key, but we got not only respawning skulls, but sometimes these little bins that you're using as platforms will not spawn in until you get to a certain point in the screen, or sometimes delay spawning in, period, for some reason. Either we want to use the key here to enter this room and find Maria. Thank you for saving me. Richter! But Annette is trapped in another place. Please, save her. Alright. And with that, we are now technically on the way to the good ending. In order to get the best ending in the game, you need to save both Maria and Annette on a single playthrough. To get the worst ending, you do neither, and there's a middle ending where you only get one of them, but it can only ever be Maria for reasons we'll go over later on. Now, you want to be careful, because you still have the key after that after that cutscene. But I believe in the game, it's considered a separate key. Either that, or there's another flag that gets tripped, because there's another door we're going to open at the end of this stage in order to get, that we need to do, in order to get the best ending once again. In fact, it's right here in this next room, if memory serves. Because now we can use this key to open up this door, and that's the end of Stage 4. And with that, we're now on to Stage Alternate 5, denoted by the apostrophe after the 5. In order to get the best ending, you need to visit Stage 4 and Alternate Stage 5 before heading towards Endgame. With that said, I want to take a look at some of the other stages in the game first, so let's head back to Stage 3 real quick and show off how you go into Stage Alternate 4 to start. As I mentioned in the last part, we just jump down into any of these holes. The alternate stage concept, I feel, is a really interesting way to add to the game without extending it exactly a single playthrough. With that said, it definitely comes off as an afterthought here in Dracula X, because you only have 4 in alternate 4 and 5 in alternate 5. Whereas in Rondo of Blood, every stage from stage 3 through I think stage 6 or 7 has an alternate version. In fact, each stage has two exits, and 2 boss fights in Rondo of Blood. And the way it works in that game in particular is, if you reach the main exits in a stage, you go to the main stage, but if you reach the alternate exit, you go to the alternate stage. So, say you're in stage alternate 3, and you want to go to stage alternate 4, you need to find the alternate exit in order to keep going across the alternate line. It's going to make eventually recording that game a bit of a nightmare if I want to show off every boss fight and all that shit, because I'm going to need to play it through each stage, sometimes upwards of 3 times, and that's going to be annoying, probably. At least there's the stage select in that game in particular. Alternate stage 4, it's a little bit weird, because, for one thing, they reused the music track, which the alternate stages in Rondo do not do from my memory. Barring, I think, alternate stage 5, which is why that became such a completely different stage in the remake of Rondo of Blood. But it feels like it's just kind of an afterthought in terms of mechanics. It's a lot of stuff we've seen before. And there's nothing entirely wrong with that. It's just very lacking. Though we do get one particular enemy here, this giant skeleton. This is counted as such an important enemy because it has so much HP that it has its own character art in the manual, and I just find that funny. With that said, it's not worth fighting. You get a bunch of hearts for beating it, I believe, but not worth the time or effort, really. Unless you're playing Symphony of the Night on New Game Plus, in which case you want to fight as many of those as you can, because that's how you get the Ring of Varda, and that accessory is ridiculous. Now, the unfortunate thing about the alternate stages in this game compared to Rondo, not only are there fewer of them for one thing, but the moment that you're thrown into this particular stage, you're locked into the bad ending, more or less, unless you use the password from the previous stage to go backwards, because you can't save Maria or Annette on this stage path. This takes us through stage alternate 4 and stage 5 in particular. In order to get the good or medium ending, you need to go through stage 4 and alternate 5, not the inverse. With that said, we do get a very particular boss fight here, which is an odd placement for him in a lot of ways, but oh well. I believe this is technically meant to be Dracula X's incarnation of the Dark Priest Shaft? This fight's a little bit weird. He's gonna float around the room, throwing various stalactites and tombs or gravestones at you to try and attack, as well as spawning some enemies on the floor. Notable regional difference as well, by the way. I believe in the English version, the gravestones he's going to eventually summon have faces on them. I believe, as is custom for Castlevania in the era, that was not what that was in the Japanese version. In Japan, they had crosses on them. And there's a bit of that in this game. They removed some blood, replaced it with like some sweat or, if anything at all. The minor sprite work changes just to not make it as graphic. Meanwhile, on the Sega side of things, Gore Central. Actually, now I think about that about lines up because they had they had Mortal Kombat with blood. They had Splatterhouse. Oh yeah, this boss fight also technically has 2 phases, which is a little bit weird, but as you can see, the dagger item crash is even pretty useful for this fight, because in this phase he tends to stick around his particular altitude set. Not a very hard boss. Honestly, I'd probably say one of the easiest in the game, despite the relative length. And that's alternate stage 4. It's just kind of there. And this will immediately throw you into normal stage 5. You can reach normal stage 5 through either this method or the alternate exit I'm going to be showing you in a moment for normal stage 4. But again, if you go here, you're not going the good ending. If you reach alternate stage 4 at all, you're not getting it, but if you reach stage normal 5, you're definitely not getting the best ending. You're at least getting the good ending. Speaking of which, in stage 4, if you want to get the alternate exit, instead of using the key on the door like we did last part, or was that earlier this part? I've already lost track of time. You just proceed to the left and fight the Minotaur. He's got his usual Minotaur attacks. He can charge across the screen, use his axe as, an axe. He can try to freeze you with some stoning breath, but it's seldom ever useful to him. The big attack of note is the charge, which leaves him embedded in the wall, which is really easy to punish him with. I can't tell why. This is definitely an easier Minotaur than the one in Rondo. But I can't exactly tell why. Maybe it's the size of the room, maybe it's the subweapons and how they work slightly differently versus the screen ratio or something. He's not too hard whatsoever, really. But for beating the Minotaur in normal stage 4, you are sent into normal stage 5. In order to get the best ending, you need to go through stages 1, 2, 3, 4, and alternate 5. With that said, let's now take a look at normal stage 5 so we can go through the best endings, last 3 stages, all in a row. Which stage is this, actually? To an extent, the stages in this game do blend together a little bit in my head. But I can't tell if that's because this was the rare game I recorded all of on one day instead of just doing like 2 or 3 stages, then waiting till the next day to do other things. Or if it's just because there's just not as much memorable in this game compared to other games. Oh, hey, the usual Fleeman hallway. I haven't missed this at all. Actually, now that I look at it, this is like a direct visual reference to something from Rondo of Blood, too. Honestly, Dracula X's biggest difficulty improvement to me is that as long as you're just taking your time and not rushing past the enemies, you can probably take them out pretty quickly. And just worry about the hazards rather than any kind of time limit, since it's not in this game like I mentioned last part. But that said, Fleamen are still super annoying because they're super hoppy, and especially when they're entrapped in little corners like this, there's no way around this for me. I just have to accept the death. I should note the death animation is meant to be blood. They changed it to blue sweatish stuff in the US version. You know, I don't know why it is. Maybe it's just because of the kind of game this is. And how Castlevania and Castlevania likes in particular tend to do their vertical sections. But I see this and I'm just reminded of that one room in, I think, it was like the first half of Castlevania 3. Late enough you could have Sypha, but not end game, and I hate it. Also, the platforms in that room crumble when you're on them for too long, so make sure you keep moving. And hey, look! More Spear Knights! You tired of them yet? They're not done. Not by a mile. I can't tell if the spamming of these enemies is a good way to teach the player how to deal with it, legitimate threats, or just lazy design, because honestly, it could be either. If you're wondering why I walked backwards and kneeled and then went down, I was waiting for him to get over there because I didn't want them both on the same side of the staircase, or on opposite sides of the staircase, rather, because at that point, I am basically guaranteed to get hit. Additionally, I was also probably looking at Discord on my other computer and chatting with someone. That enemy there also has way more reach than you'd expect, but there's also, I think, only 2 of them in the game period, and they're right here, so you don't have to worry about one of them at all, depending on your speed. Oh, I know, there's 3. Forgot about this guy. You always gotta forget about the rear guard. Maybe there's 4. Let's see. Come on, is there a 4th? No, there's just no one here for some reason. With that said, there are 2 staircases up in this room that we didn't come down from, at least for a reason. There's a wrong way to go. Additionally, if you fail the jump in this room, you'll have to go down the second staircase to, you know, beat the stage. Come on. Get over here. This is the other reason I hate Spear Knights. They're very good at ledge guarding. Probably not the term most people would use for that, but oh well. Also, I believe there's an item you can grab in the pillar right below me, but I forget which side of the stage it's on. So if it's on the side of the staircase that's like right next to it, go and get it, I guess. But if it's not, don't worry about it. Probably. All it would probably be is either a 1-up or some chicken, and honestly, I feel the life count in this game is plentiful enough that compared to its difficulty curve, even if you die at the boss fight, it's no problem getting back to where you were. This is probably one of the hardest screens in the game, though. We have a long vertical section that's about 90% over bottomless pit. And we have crows. Castlevania is now, I guess Castlevania because I've been doing this since Castlevania 1, but I also associate this a lot with Ninja Gaiden. Again, as long as you're hopefully taking your time and not trying to just bum rush the level design, you'll probably get through this no problem. But still, watch out, because the game can surprise you every now and then, just because it's Castlevania. Also, I believe the cross boomerang's graphics were changed, period, in this version. I believe in the Japanese version, it actively, at least the pickup for it, actively looked like a crucifix. Whereas in this, they make it more like what you throw. And honestly, I kind of prefer that because I don't see how the cross boomerang could work the way it does in any regard, looking like a crucifix. Not that it would probably work like that anyway, IRL, but you know what I mean. Hopefully. I am known to be bad at explaining things from time to time, but also way too detailed in others. Now we're on to the boss fight, though, and a room ripped right out of Rondo. It's time for the werewolf, but this werewolf's a little bit bouncy because he likes to move back and forth, jumping between the walls, doing wall kicks and somersaults. It's a martial artist of all things. With that said, as you can see, the watch's item crash is kind of ridiculous because of the damage it does. You can also do the screw attack. It's bouncy, but I feel compared to its incarnation in Rondo, it's a lot slower, so it's a lot easier as well. And now that man is just naked. And now Thanos snapped. And that's main stage 5, but it's the incorrect stage for the good ending. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 3, we're going to show off the real stage 5 that you need to go to, as well as the final 2 stages of the game. See you guys then.